Okay, welcome into your session this morning, or whenever you're watching this. Okay, so you want to have your bolster across the mat, and you're going to put a block on its lowest setting directly in front and attached to the bolster. And then you're going to sit up onto that block. As small as it is, its only focus is to support your tailbone. So this doesn't feel very tailbone-ish when you sit on a block. But you got your belt buckled up in a big loop. You got some blankets behind you. So let's go back. You're going to lower back onto a bolster and block. Remember, this block is attached to the bolster. It's connected. If you're wondering, your bolster didn't come with a block attachment. I don't mean that. Okay. Stretch the legs to a little soft of a bend here. So I want you to have a bend into the legs, even if you extend them down. Lower your head back to your blankets. Use a stack, whether again, like it's towels or whatever it may be. The reference for the blanket height is generally about the bolster height. No higher. In fact, you'll probably go lower in a few moments. Okay? So feel when the knees have a slight bend, whether you're lucky enough to have the wall that you're touching with your feet, or maybe your feet are onto the ground, the bottoms of them. You're going to get the weight that you're going to use for the strength training on the breath. You're going to place that across the rib intersection or across the thigh lids. My preference as I stretch the legs down is to place the sand across the upper legs, right? So I'm going to get a feeling of, the funny part is it feels as if it's kind of pelvis versus the leg parts, because the bony structure here kind of feels like the legs are just dropped down from it, okay? But if my feet spread apart a little bit, there's a little bit of width with the legs, it'll be easier in my back muscles. So you want to make things so you can receive the pose, not feel like, oh, there's so much resistance, I'm stressing out, right? So bend the knees if you need to, straighten the legs if you can, stretch your arms open, and give yourself the opportunity to decide, should I have this 2 blanket situation or go down to 1? Okay, if you're flexing at the neck a lot, definitely go back down to 1. And if you can feel that extra stretch in the abdominals and it's comfortable to experience that opening, go back to the 1 blanket, or you can always add in your second one. However, it's okay for your neck. And then as we arrive into settling the breath, feeling that openness, and consider the visualization of the back part that touches the bolster. Visualize that moving outwards. Thinking these things can be helpful, right? You might find that if you let your eyes close and computing that expansion of the back space could be challenging. Just take another breath and figure that breath into expansiveness. It may start just at the front because you relate to the front of the body so often, but the back body is just as important here. You need to bend the legs a little bit further. If the back feels like that's supporting it, if it's compromised, do that. But arrive on gathering your attention on the even rhythm of your breath. Breathe in through the nose. Just letting expansion happen in the breathing muscles. And the extremities can really let go, especially the upper extremities, resting the arms, resting the limbic brain. And perhaps the lower extremities, the legs extending down. Now, if the back feels tighter from the legs stretching, open the chest. Now feel, how would you do that if you're limited to the floor holding your arms? If the arms don't go past the floor, hopefully. So your movement quality of your breathing, really find that this practice is hydrating, right? All the tissues inside. It's like it's basically hydration, right? The focus with the breathing, with the expansiveness. So let's just take a few more moments here. Those of you that want to walk the feet in towards the groins and then bring the soles of the feet together, the knees outwards, it's a nice option to adjust the circulation in the inner line of the legs. Even if there's sand below the belly button, that can still be supported, but feel that kind of ease. And noticing if you can work into different states of alignment that you can just enjoy shifting. In fact, at first my knees were pretty high and now they're just kind of guiding out. The sensation is at the root of the adductor, the thigh, inner leg to my hip. That's where I feel the sensation. Inner leg muscles, right, are hip muscles. Give just a few more moments, whether the legs are straight down, bent, or feet together, knees out. Now relax the hands, feeling as the shoulders center back. And with that natural arch of the spine, bring the knees to point up, walk the feet in towards the block. I don't imagine you're going to step up on your block, but it's there at the tail. And as you turn to or shift to the next shape, we're going to actually get a lift of the hip bone. So you need to move the sand aside. And as the hands reach down to the bolster, whatever you might be using here to support the ribs, it's, instead of it being at the rib area only, it's going to be down where the block is. So that could be a helpful insight for the transition here. So press down through the balls of the feet, spring the heels up, make sure you're down to one blanket at this point. It's not helpful to have two coming up. And then as I push back into my upper back muscles, I'm going to lift up my hips and then just move the bolster down. So it's about the space of where the block was under my pelvis. Try to go down a little bit at a time. So if I just place my weight into my bolster now and lift my feet up, unfortunately, I pushed the bolster too far down, so I have to come back down and then move it back up a little bit. So a little goes a long way in the next inverted pattern. So adjust things so that you can feel the back of the pelvis on the bolster. It's almost as if your tail is kind of at the edge of that bolster, right? It's not on the floor. You don't want your rear on the floor, but you are positioned. So the rule of the ribs here is actually supported, right? So I still feel my ribs expand with the bolster this high up. Take a ball, if you've got a therapy ball. If you don't, you can use a block between the knees, but you'll place the ball or block center of the knees. And as you move the knees side to side, feel just that positioning of the pelvis gently starting to stretch into the hips. So as the knees reach over to one side, you want to feel that you have almost this opportunity to allow that lower back, especially since you were just in a back bend pose, let it loosen up and warm up. So the knees might feel as if they kind of are a uni knee swinging from side to side. Pick the best parts of both knees into one. And as the knees swing towards one side, feel if they can go closer to the arm and back in center. And feel how the waist has an opportunity to balance in between, and then it has the abdominal kind of pull when the knees go to the side. So there's an interesting abdominal strengthening occurring. And it's kind of easy, right? Just put something between the knees, get on top of some height, and then off you go side to side with the hip stretching. Okay. All right. Now we're going to do something kind of funny. We're going to take the ball and we're going to place it. Now, if you don't have a ball, you can use like a towel next to your hip. I think the block would be a lot. Okay. But if you've got the ball, especially if you got a pretty smushy one, it might be better on this one. But I'm centered on my bolster. If you feel as if the ball's taking over the bolster on this one, you can always push a little bit to the right side. You can just move over to the right side of your bolster, on the bolster. But place the ball, or if you have a towel, to the upper outer left thigh. So it's right at the, it's higher than the leg itself, but it's kind of right at the rear. It's on the, it's smooshed in as you can get it. So you've got to have your body, your hips on the bolster, either center or a little bit over to the right. I move myself a little to the right. Okay, take a belt. Okay, bring the right foot, lower it down towards the ground. It doesn't have to touch down yet, but you want to have enough free play in the hip. So I don't necessarily want to push and tighten. I want to just let the right foot lift off the ground. And then you're going to scoop up your left foot. It's not easy to get your foot on this maneuver, but that's why the right leg has to move a little bit downwards. And then as your left leg goes up, you got your belt connected, right? You're going to hold onto the belt with the left hand, right foot on the ground, phew, and then move the left leg out to the left side. Okay, so the adductor, that inner leg, gets a little bit more pull. Now, again, if the ball's kind of rolling off, or you find you do this without the ball, which is fine, the ball makes it so that you go further, right? Because it's now kind of pinning into the upper outer leg, and then you can find that stretch outwards. Yeah. Let the right leg kind of go where it needs to. So if the knee swerves a little bit out to the right side, it's not perfectly pointed towards the base of your mat, no problem. I want you to feel that left inner leg trying to maneuver that reach through the leg, inner leg into the hip. Well, I feel like it's inner leg, but it's a hip muscle. Taking me some time to believe all that. Okay, so feel the leg in its full range now, not bouncing. Like if I try to bounce the leg, it's not necessarily the best thing here for the ligaments. So I'm just going to let the leg go as far as it can, which might be kind of high. You might push the ball in, and it feels better to have the leg a little bit farther up. Okay. All right. Now, as you bring the left leg back on up, you got to find a combination of coordinating your legs here. You're going to extend the right leg down, and you can put a sandbag on the top of it or not, up to you. Okay. Keep in mind, you only want one blanket under your head. If you're still stuck with two, be sure you go down to the one. So sand is a little bit of a workout to maneuver, but you just put the weight on the top of the right thigh, any weight you have. And as the right leg is relaxing, especially at the ankle, you have the choice of either holding this belt with both hands and stretching your calf, focusing on the calf, or you can bring it behind your head for brain float. It's all up to you. So if you're familiar with brain float, you would likely still need that belt, and maybe this loop I created was a little too. I was a little too excited about it, huh? Too ambitious. I'm feeling like maybe I'm taller. Okay, so I want the loop to be enough if I'm taking brain float, so the belt would reach to the crown of my head, no farther up. And as I bring my belt behind my head at the shelf at the back of my head, I want to find that opportunity to lengthen the back of my spine, that cervical vertebrae, feel that length. Now, this doesn't mean I'm trying to push my chin to my chest. So I find if I move my arms down by the sides, a little bit lower than shoulder height, I let my shoulders rest back. purposely. And then feeling if you need to loosen the belt, if it's too much struggle, or you decide to go into the holding the belt version. I think they're both good. I like them both. I find that as I'm here, I think I like the idea of not holding something, just letting my hands relax. So the belly moves with the breath. Maybe closing your eyes. Feel that circulation through the front of the right leg, into the abdominal muscles. And feeling how the breath can support the back releasing. So this is a lot of work here. There's 3 things going on, right? With the leg, each leg, and then you've got something stuck at your hip here to keep, it can enable that feature of the lifted leg. Yeah, and the ball may not work for some of us. I'm finding whatever extra support I can get so I can just be and receive the therapeutic, effects of the pose without as much stress. Right? You're trying to down regulate, so you're using more props to get you into that circulation kind of event. This is a circulation event. Okay, hands to the back of your head if your belt is there, and you're going to slide the belt off. Regardless if your brain floating on the second side, you've got to change it for a few moments. So first things first, we just take the sand over to the left side of our bolster. You can actually even put it on your bolster so it's easier to get for the next side, because you don't want to have all your body, like your hip, on that left side anyhow. But when I switch sides, I'm going to purposely go bend the right leg, lift up the leg so the right foot is into the belt, left leg lowers down, bending the knee first, ball to the upper outer right thigh. It might work with you this far over on the bolster, it might, but as long as the ball is stuck, it's kind of scooped under, so the tissues are, in some sense, it's kind of nuzzled into your right upper outer thigh. Okay, so if you're not sure, where would that be? If you're on the ball's on the right side, it's really all the way up at the greater trochanter, and you might find where that hip bone is where you can place the ball and insert it. And as you push into the ball, you let the right hand hold the belt under the foot and let the right leg reach open. Okay. And unfortunately, right, you might be in a space where you've got to move a little bit on your bolster so you can get that full range. Open to the right. Okay. No sand needed, but you could use sand. I mean, you could have it on the left thigh already. I'm just trying to make sure that my left side of my back, I can squirm around so I'm comfortable with the reach of the leg. What's another opportunity for this one, most of you have probably experienced, is you would hold the knee, the opposite knee of the leg with the belt. So it's a deeper stretch. I didn't get that far in my planning. So as the leg motions out, let gravity have you. I suppose a wall is kind of a benefit because you can relax in it. What's the purpose, right? Is it to get more stretch and more flexibility? It's really to get the circulation, the draining through the leg pit, right? From the leg lifted, that lymphatic drain down and towards the groins. That's one of the focus points. It's partially hip, partially the lymphatic drain. Okay, so feel how that left foot is capable of pressing, but also if your left foot pushes, you might feel like your left hip is confused. What does it move down? Does it move to the right? So just press the weight into the back of the pelvis and then move the right leg with assistance straight up. And as your left leg releases down, whether you keep it bent or you put the leg straight down, either way, bent or straight, you can add your sand, either way. The sand can go on with the leg in more of a reached position, perhaps. We might think that's better. But if I bend my leg a little bit, I still feel some benefit. It feels better on your back. Okay? So I still have the ball stuck. Fortunately, it stayed. And as I move out with the belt loop, yeah, this might be a little tiny bit different than you're used to because of the ball assistance, but it kind of brings the hips into center. If we ever do it again, I don't know. Okay, so belt to the back of your head, it's at the shelf. If you decide not to go with a brain float, you would just simply hold the belt with both hands and have a reach with the hand, so as you hold on, you're pulling, and there's sensation, I love this one, into my calf. It must be good because it does feel pretty sensitive all the way up the lower leg. Right, so for some of us, it's going to be more the full brain float that we want to go into. And if that's the case, go for it. But find the length of the belt so it's plenty for you. You're not shaking. If it's a little shaky, perhaps hold the belt. Right? Let the neck stretch, hold the belt. Okay, feeling, especially the movement at the belly. Sometimes it only responds if you think on it, or it looks more responsive when you think about it. But let that lower back just feel where it's centered. One side has a little bit more stretch than the other, the right side likely. Just let the weight of the head release back into the belt. Unless your head is on a blanket, still you want your brain to relax back. Now, as you bring the hands to the back of your head and slide the belt off, head completely down the blanket. And as you get a hold of your belt with one hand, just slide the sand left. It should go to the left for where we're going. And as you pull, as the left leg bends and moves back in and up to the belt, both feet up into the belt, kind of exert some pulling across the balls of the feet, right? So closer towards the toes. See if the inner line of the big toes can push inwards and up. And then as you push the feet out, right, like you're loofing your feet a little bit, you have to really push out into the belt. And as you move the feet apart, maybe notice if the lower back requires a little bit of bend in the knees to find more of a kind of a spread of the lower back to stretch, and then free of holding the belt for a good 30 seconds. The hands can go to that kind of headlights of the hips and just feeling that centering. The belly moves with the breath. Remember that lymph drain that we're so important here in our restorative practice. The inversions are gentle, but they're fairly strong, right, as an influence, because you can be centered and supported in them. You're kind of down regulating while you're in the position versus your heart rate going up and stressing out. Okay, now feel that the knees are going to bend towards the shoulders, not out to the sides. That would be a good thing. Bend the knees, hold onto the belt, slide the feet to each other, and then as you bend the knees deeper, belt goes away. You can go bye-bye. We might get back to it, but bye-bye belt. And let's take a turn to the side, to the left side. So roll left, get a hold of that ball, and you're going to slide down. Watch out for your block. It might be right there. And I want you to set up for side sage. So we're going to do some interesting shoulder work today. This is just to kind of warm up the sides of the body, the kind of lateral beam. And with that bolster across the mat, get a couple blankets stacked again. so that you have the appropriate, and you might even want more height than this for your head because the blanket's mushed down. Of course, you don't want your head on the blankets and lifting and tightening your neck. So when we do our neck stretches today, you'll know if this one, you worked well with this. So ball option to the inside of the right thigh, block goes over to the other side of the blankets overhead, and then you are going to just simply get your sand, if you have that. Again, you can do the whole practice without sandbags, but they're nice to have. You're going to lean to that left side and then take the sand across the hip or lengthwise down the side of the hip or even farther up. Kind of to play with it. I think if you're solo with sanding yourself, you might find the benefit to the hip bone is greater, right? For your bones, really get it onto the hip itself. Unless you have multiple sandbags, you can layer up. Yeah, it might fall off, right, if you go too high up. So reaching is an option, right? Reaching over is an option. So if this is a strain today, you might put your hand down on the blanket or even on the bolster or on your side. But I like to just see where I'm at in a moment, right? So give it a reach, maybe move the block over to the right side if you're using the right arm. And also feel that kind of correspondence through the right side of the spine when the arm is reaching. It just depends on how much the right leg stretches back. So if you want to get a little bit more kind of reactivity in your hip, you can always scissor kick so the left leg can kind of kick out and straighten, straight-ish. Right leg is pretty bent. And then the final focus would be to let your head relax on the blanket. And that's where I find a little challenge, is letting the weight of my head rest into the blanket. Breathing. And consider if the legs are more of a scissor kick, that you have some caution for that left side of the left hip up into the spine. So it might, so for me, it tightens a little bit there. I can feel a little bit of a pinching when my left leg straightens. So I'm going to go back to bending, see if I can kind of iron that out. But you don't want to have kind of a short circuit and a nerve here. So we just get a feeling of, okay, how does it feel? Like there's definitely some sensation. That's okay, but okay, let the weight of your head let go for a few more moments. That's probably the challenge here, letting your head relax. Okay, now let's kind of scrub out the upper back here. We'll do an upper back scrub. Okay, with the ball. So if you can let the sand just slough off. Oh, that was a loud boom, huh? Okay, shift to your left hip. Take the ball. Okay, you'll need the ball for this one. If you don't have a ball, you can actually windshield wiper. It would be good too. So the ball goes to the back onto the bolster. Some people feel like they got to get the ball right at the edge of the bolster at the base, kind of lower ribs. But I find I like to kind of scoot my hips down and then just bring the hands behind my head and just kind of scrub around into the upper back. It's probably okay to get the ball pretty far back there so that you can influence the shoulder blades. This one's a little bit improvisational, like where should I exactly put my ball? Okay. And if you're not using the ball or you're not interested in using that, you can take the ball out, bring your elbows on the bolster, feet wide as your mat, and windshield wiper the knees side to side. So you can choose that as well. So it's up to you. But you might find that just that movement, crossover, balancing your hip, circulation. I like both of these. I think I like a little bit of each between sides. Not one, just both. Arms could move out, just this is a bit challenging on the neck to keep it tightening up. So usually holding the back of your head would be clearly a little bit better for the neck. Okay, now as you get to that second side, you're gonna push firm back into the ball. Hold the back of your head, just like you did with brain float. You had your belt around the shelf at the back of your head, the occiput. So feel occipitally, let the elbows spread out and let your head release back into your hands. And this is certainly one where you have to kind of study where would the ball be that I'd feel help, probably high up on the back. Come up and see if you can carefully navigate your body to turn to the right. Okay, so now let's get ready for side stage, but I do want to show just a quick thing I've been playing with the ball, because I've been playing with putting it on my bolster. This wasn't my idea, it was a myofascial massage idea, and then working with just spiraling, right? Find a way to mobilize my ribs. So I've been playing with that. It feels great on my breath. So something you could play with in your spare time. Okay, go to the other side, ball on the inside of the left leg. Sand up to the left side. Remember, you can't really do this one wrong, right? You don't have to have like the alignment points with measuring tools here, right? You don't need to get a ruler out, but you do want to feel from your felt sense of self-inquiry is huge, right? For this model of teaching. That's probably going to come in more for me as I teach longer, is the self-inquiry in your pose, so you can customize it. So for me, I've got a real habit on this one of holding my neck. So I know getting my head to relax is more important than anything. All the other things take care of themselves, since I have an awareness of the hip part. So the right knee bends close to the bolster. It's not on top of the bolster. Left hip bone is kind of getting saturated with sand here. And then as my left arm reaches, right, I'm trying to feel the mobilization of my ribs, right, the elastic ribs. With breathing, they feel elastic, right? Inhale, expansive, exhale, center. I know they're great. So left hand wherever you want it, over to the side, on your side, anywhere, okay? All right, now let the weight of your head relax and breathe. And truly feel the weight into the hip. Actually, both hips, huh? The right hip gets the body weight, the left hip gets the sand for some of us, right? So it's an interesting adventure with weight bearing. Some of you are going to scissor kick that right leg. Some are going to keep it bending. So scissor kick would mean you kind of start to straighten your right leg. You might feel it a little bit into the hip. Take a few more breaths. It's okay to feel things pulled apart, especially that left front thigh. The hip flexor feels like it's kind of getting yanked a little bit back. So what's important is also to let the weight sink into the right hip here. Right, really bask in your breath here. Breath basking. Okay, now let that sand slide off. You're going to simply let your ribs roll in towards the bolster, and then bring your hands down to touch it. And when you come up, what we'll do is we're going to come up and sit on our bolster, okay? So when you're sitting on the bolster, I want you to take your feet to each other, sole to sole, in cobbler's pose, okay? So feet together, knees apart. You can always use your blocks under your thighs. It's a brief seated spell though. So if you want your blocks under the thighs, use that. Otherwise, use a sandbag across the feet. I like this. Okay, shoulders rolling back, just simple. Shrugging, lifting, and rolling the shoulders. And kind of feel, well, is it my shoulder I'm lifting or is it my lower throat? It's interesting. So do a few of those. Maybe you have some crunchy shoulders. Hope you can't hear mine. Okay. Hands out to the knees, tilt that right ear to the right shoulder. Stretch the left side of the neck. Okay. Feel when the hands are holding on towards the knees, right? Right, your left hand holds onto that knee and you might find, oh, I'm feeling that stretch in my neck. And then feel that your heart lifts and then you switch to the other side. So left ear to left shoulder. Right side of the neck feels maybe the same type of stretch. Maybe the intensity is slightly different. You can always, persuade the shoulders to move a little bit back. But feeling the circulation. And then one more time, shoulders rolling, center the neck. You might feel if your chin has a little bit of lift, this is helpful, or maybe the chin a little bit down. Just feel for yourself what occurs when the shoulders are going back and down. And then tilting your ear one more time to your right shoulder for a few seconds. And then tilt the ear towards the left shoulder. Yeah, just feeling the neck. I mean, you might feel so different from one side to the next. One neck to the next neck. Okay. Now, centering, take the sand off. And we're going to take a reach to our bolster. So I want you to just come down off of the seated position and pivot your bolster so it's away from the wall. So you're going to have your feet towards the wall if you are using a wall space behind you. No one has to, but if you happen to have your bolster, let's see. I think what I want you to do is push the bolster on top of your blankets. If you need blanket under the knees, that's different. You would take one of your blankets out and put it under your knees. That's fine. And you'll reach your hands on top. This is pretty high. So when I stretch the ribs back, my focus here is on movement of the whole back seam. So my knees are going to stretch apart, not into frog pose, but far apart. Feel that reach of the arms. Okay. Okay, now take the bolster off of your blankets and let's take the hands to hold onto a block wide. Okay, hands hold the block. You're going to put your elbows on top of the bolster, scoot your feet back unless you hit the wall, and hold the block and bring your forehead down to the bolster. And you're going to try to move your hands just up from the elbows, maybe towards the shoulder blades, but that's a lot. So I'm very content with just holding my block, putting my forehead down, and that's it. Right? I don't want to total anything. I do want to feel my triceps stretch. Breathing. Okay, now lift up, put the block off to the side, and you're going to reach your hands to the sides of the bolster. So turn the bolster lengthwise and bring your hands down to the sides and reach the chest forward. Bring the knees out to the side so you're almost kind of straddling the bolster, but the hip bones lower down, and you're just lowering down so you push the blanket or blankets. If you have one still under your knee, that's fine. And I want you to bring your elbows out wide on the blankets so you kind of stack the forearms or the two arms I love pushing the wall. So I gotta be honest, I'm gonna move my bolster a little farther forward so I can push into the wall with my feet. I think that's what they are. Okay. So push so the knees are off the ground. If the knees touch down, still it's fine, but this is a nice lower back strengthener when I push into the feet and my knees are up and I kind of use that counterbalance and force. It's definitely resistance right into my back, but it doesn't hurt my back. So be sure that when you're here pushing your feet into the wall, your forehead down, breathing. Okay, try to balance on that little bolster. Okay, now feeling the feet push back or the knees on the ground, one or the other. You're going to reach your arms back besides you so you can still look down towards your blanket or close your eyes and feel the arms right besides your legs, right? At least your hands. Okay, or besides the upper leg, outer leg, and you're moving your shoulders back, strengthening through the spine. All right, this is our most challenging move here. So feeling that strength in the upper lungs. Feel that resistance building, breathe. Okay, chest forward, hands on the floor, elbows back, reaching behind you, and lift up through the torso. Upward facing dog with the knees maybe on the ground for some, maybe off the ground. This is definitely a lower back strengthener to push into both my hands and my feet. Okay, and then we're going to lower back to the knees and shift back to your hips. Take the knees in close as they can go and step the right foot to the right side of your bolster. So the left thigh is pushed back on top of the left thigh should be on top of the bolster. Okay, maybe not all parts of your left thigh are on top of this bolster, but at least from the knee up into the middle part of my quad, I can feel on top of the bolster. You can have hands on blocks. This might be nice. I find that the blocks sometimes are a little bit intrusive for this one. It feels like a lot on my knees when I shove into it. So I'm pretty content lower. So I can just focus on my left front thigh stretching. But be careful that the joints are stacked here. So I've got my right knee over the right ankle. In fact, I could improve on that. We'll move my right foot farther forward. And I can feel that stretch kind of everywhere, right? From torso down, I can feel the stretch everywhere. Again, hands could be on blocks or the floor. Left hip flexor is really getting that stretch. You probably feel a little cattywampus on this one because of the bolster pushing your leg onto it. Okay. All right, now take a moment when you reach the chest forward, inhale. And as you exhale, try to flex the spine, chin towards the chest, just like cat pose. Inhale forward, arch the spine, chest forward, reaching. Exhale, round. This is a lot, right? This type of approach for the left quad is a lot with the cat pose. Okay. Now just feel that trickle effect of the left thigh. There's always further to go. So we'll take a hold of some blocks, okay? Turn the right foot so it's as parallel as you can enable through the joint. Okay, and hopefully you got a wall for yourself here. So what we're going to work our way towards is to step the left foot eventually forward besides the left side of the bolster, right? So I'm going to lift up the back knee. I'm going to push up so my right thigh starts to lengthen and step the left foot besides the bolster on that left side. Good. It's not easy because there's some spacing at the hip joints. You're trying to stretch them open. So my ankles I'm bordering right on the edge of the bolster. I'm just holding onto the bolster with my ankles. Okay. So hands on blocks or not, you decide. You can just drape over and hold your elbows. If you need to surrender, this might feel really good for the moment. Hold the legs. You can hold the blocks. This to me feels safer is to put my hands onto my blocks. Okay, but let the back line of the body get a stretch. If you want to take your feet out wider on the edges of your sticky mat, that's great. Or if you're on a carpet, you don't have a mat, you can take your feet out to the point where you can feel that inner, right? You really want to feel at the buttock area, that inner line, right, of the ischial. So just feel like you can feel your, inside the sitting bone, pushing, like energized. Inner sitting bones. Yeah. Okay. Now when we shift the side, toe heel, if your feet are in a wide stance towards the bolster, this might be a really smart way to come into these. So when I step the right foot back and I start to go into that high lunge, you might decide, kind of inch your way back a little further, and then lower the knee down. So you might find, well, how am I going to get my knee behind the bolster? That's what you've got to find, is the knee's got to go behind the bolster to stretch the quads. You have to be a little careful, right, when you step into it. You don't want the knee on the side of the bolster. The front of the right thigh is on the bolster to lengthen out, even if it's kind of getting the bolster to be smushed, okay? It's a very deep sensation. And if I have the blocks, I find this is helpful. Of course, last side, this is the last side too. But the other side we did the cat-cow, the movement dynamic. It's up to you if you want to put the hands down, try to arch the spine and flex. You might be surprised that there's a different orientation of your sensation on the second hip and quad. You might go, wow, when I do the cat pose, it felt like the other side was really responding. Right, the nerve sensation was different. This side might feel like, it's tighter, but it doesn't respond the same. So just take it in the moment that you experience it and make sure that the left knee is over the ankle. That could be your important piece here. The blocks might come in handy if you're going into that cat-cow variation. Give it just a few more moments. The right thigh is going to stay with this reach. Okay. All right, now if you're craving a downward facing dog pose, perhaps it could be true. I'll give you a moment here where you can select that option. Okay. It's on you, not on the screen. Okay. If you decide you're going to take a downward dog in between where we're going, you could push back with both feet and let the heels lift at the wall and stay here for a few cycles of breath. You might decide, nope, I'm good. Don't need to down dog it. You can stay from here and then pivot your bolster across your mat, horizontal, and walk your left foot over to the right into pigeon pose. You choose. But if you're back in that downward dog, right, and you're going to start to come out of that, you're going to move the left foot back to the left side and then bring the knee down and walk your left foot over into pigeon pose. So left foot crosses to the right side of the mat. If you're averse to pigeon, I'll show you an option just in a moment here. So those of us with that left knee out, we can take our blankets in. These are really nice to have, I think, for variation from blocks under the forearms, so that you can have an even balance for your torso versus dropping it to the floor. Okay, so if you're used to doing that variation where you drop down and you kind of smush into your leg, you might want to try things that give more space on the spine, I guess. So the blankets under is good. If you are going to do pigeon pose, here's your variation. Bring the right leg in, seated, cross-legged, left foot forward of right shin, and take a forward fold. Okay, so that's a little different, right, for the position of the knee. It's still crossing, right? And I'm still loading the hip, but it's not going to be putting the knee on the ground. Some of you might be well, I have challenged knees, but this works okay. So if it works okay, go with it. Take a few more moments here. If you're forward and leaning, I suggest you try some blankets, even if you're used to going low. Just give it a try. Give some balance to the pelvis. A few moments here. Left hip. Yeah, lucky if you have the wall, right? So you have something that helps you respond to the circuitry, right? The connective circuitry from the leg action into the hip. It really wakes up the hip. As if it needs to be awakened anymore. Maybe. Okay, now if you're leaning in your pigeon pose, you're going to lean left to the left buttock and bring your hands forward, pushing, lift the chest, and then change sides. So right leg swings forward and left leg extends back, okay? So taking that left leg to get a full reach of the front thigh, as if you're pivoting and pushing that left thigh bone onto the bolster. That's why these dense bolsters can be so nice for the circulation, right? The pressure of them onto the bones. But you don't want to bolster too soft. All right, so if you're there, if you decide no pigeon for me right now, take a simple seated with right leg forward of left, seated on the support of your bolster. And you want to keep that reach of the chest, and blocks can be really nice for seated forward fold. You could also put your foot like on top of your blanket. That might be easier in the knee joint. You can put sand on your thigh, the thigh that you're stretching, that hip, the right thigh. It's kind of up to you. Sand on the pigeon pose might be a little aggressive, okay? Unless it's just across the lower back, but that still can be a lot. So keep it simple. Find where the awareness is across the span below the lumbar spine. So since the right hip is focused, it's going to be a little bit higher, I hope, so you can influence it. Push back into the wall. You feel that natural lower back arching. Yeah, just the right amount. Your hip onto the bolster, your leg crossed on the bolster is going to prevent you from pushing your tail too far back, because you kind of literally are just sitting on the bolster, right? It's a seated pose. You watch that the shoulders don't shove up to the ears too much. Feel that you can push down into your elbows and also create that kind of length in your torso. Right, in case you don't know, right, you don't want to drop, you want to push and find resistance. Or maybe it's your habit. Okay, so feeling how you push back into that leg behind you, that pressure. If you're in a forward fold, you're ahead of us coming up. Okay. So come back to your hip position here. So let's swing the left leg out to the left side, and we're going to take a stretch of the leg. I'm going to face to the side, so I think you can kind of observe this, but left leg goes out, right leg bends. I'm going to put a block or a ball under the right knee. You get to choose. If you've got a ball, choose that. And careful here, take a sandbag, lift it and place it at the higher part of that right thigh, so it's a hip hugger. And then you're going to keep that turn to the right. So left hand to the right leg. Yeah, and you just had this as a position for your hip opener. So feel just the bend of the right leg, the right amount. So if your right foot needs to go a little forward because of the hinge into the joint, go for it. Okay, probably not put it on the blankets because it might crank the knee a bit. So let the foot be on the ground if possible. And when you hold on to that right knee, you're going to turn the waist And try to do this kind of freestanding with the back and the right arm. So instead of touching the ground because it's too far, or maybe touching the wall, if you can, that would be excellent if you could touch the wall in this one. I didn't set myself up for success on that, but that would be best practices. But feel the left heel reach out to it's about 10 o'clock on the left-hand side. Yeah, let your head turn to the left so that you can look out to the left foot. Feel that heel reaching, the leg reaching. If it hurts your knee at all, you just put a blanket under it. Right, you would just drag one of those blankets across and just slide it under the left knee, maybe roll it one more time, and just see if that probably will help. So I don't want you to over hyperextend the back of that left knee, okay? So from here, we reach the left arm down to the left leg. Instead of grabbing onto a belt, you could have a block positioned besides your left leg, right? I'm gonna have mine tilted up on my blanket so that I just reach my arm down so the palm is open to the side and then bring the right arm up. Yeah, a little caution here. We don't want to overdo it. So feel when the arm is up, right? Just straight up. Maybe it turns to the right. Okay. And as you lean into that left side, you decide, like for me, this is enough leaning. I don't need to go any further to feel that openness in the right side of my low back and my waist. I don't want to crank the arm over. So take just a few more moments here. Feel that reach. Do that right side, great. Okay, now as you come back up, seal the pose. Bring the left hand to the right knee, right arm around the right side to the left side of the back, actually. So the front of my right hand is touching towards my upper left hip area, still on my waist. And then release, come back forward, stretch the right leg out, keep it simple, bend the left knee, and place a ball under it. If you use the blanket on the other side for the knee, you might as well just start out with it, right? You can just have it rolled. If you don't, and your leg stretches down, and you don't feel any residual pressure, sand goes on the left thigh, and I just start with that turn to the left side. So feeling that rotation, press out into the right leg. So likely each side, you might have a little different adventure with your range of motion. It is probably an input that comes all the way from the top of your skeleton down, right? You have ranges of motion that are differing. So for instance, when I turn on this side, it's really easy for me to touch the ground with my hand, but the other side, it's not quite that comfortable. So try to offer the same on the second side with where your hand goes. So even if you go, oh, I can lean, try to stay up with the spine. Stay with the lift of the ribs. Don't be deceived by your body's tricky moves, but feel that turn through the torso. Okay. All right, now with this turn, rotation, good. We're going to take the block if you want one. I like to use a block to the right side, right on top of my blanket. It's kind of leaned in. If you don't have a blanket, you can just put it up on its highest setting. And you're going to slide down with that right arm. Yeah, careful, right? You want to go slow with that reach. And as the left arm approaches that reaching up, yeah, kind of guide the movement through the torso. Feel that reach through the waist. Breathing. Right, it only helps to get a sense of movement up through the side band of your waist. Yeah, the weight into the right hip should be a little bit more than the left, at least the sitting bone perspective. And then when you come up, try to go in towards that twist again. So right hand to left knee, left arm around the back. And then as you spiral through that waist You're going to keep the heart lifted. Push out into the right foot, right? It likes to turn in, so just do the best you can to feature the reach of the right leg to that right side. Okay. All right, now come back, center, forward, bring the left arm over the right, intertwine the arms, and bring the elbows to lift up. You could cross the right leg if you want at this point, but it's up to you. Focus on the arms, so I intertwine the arms, like almost like you give yourself a hug, one arm over, and then intertwine to lift. Okay, and then bend that right knee so you're in a little bit more basic balance in the hip joints, and then switch sides, okay? So then taking that opposite arm on top, intertwine and lift the elbows up. Okay, just find that significance in your upper back. The shoulders kind of sweep around. Okay, you can go up with the elbows, you can go down with the elbows. They're both correct. More often it's going up, that's top. Depends on the shape that you're seeking. So as you release that arm crossing, we're going to come onto our back line. So I want you to take the sand off to the side, okay? A couple blocks are going to be important. And we might use our belt actually. So blanket number 2 kind of gets set away. Bolster goes right up to the wall. And yeah, let's use the belt. This is good medicine here for our hip flexors. So ball and belts are going to be significant to start with. Okay, so once you get onto your back, your feet are on your bolster, and your ball goes underneath your sacrum. So right at the base of the spine, you'll place your ball. You have to push a little bit. It's nice to have the bolster. You can also push your feet into the wall to get your hips to go up. You can push and lift. But the ball is at the base and as centered as you think it could be. Rest your tail as if the ball's kind of nudging the tail farther down, okay? So you're not missing anything. You're not seeing anything weird with the ball. It is underneath my lowest part of my spine. Okay, I'm just trying to enable that balance in the pelvis because it's been tweaked a bit in the last few cycles of stretches. It's been not symmetrical, right? Okay, so push the ball to the left buttock, and I want you to have it on one side at a time, and you're going to nudge the hip side to side to massage into that left glutes, but it is kind of more than just the medius here, isn't it? So just get a feeling of smushing the ball and pushing it across so that the circulation is a nice little massage. It shouldn't hurt. It should almost feel like, not painful, but it's nudging the connective tissue. You get this layer of movement across the fibers, right, that top layer, pushing it, and then bring the ball over to the other buttock. Only got 2. So feel the hips and the frontal hip bones. Their movement is pretty simple. It's just side to side. It's not anything special. It's not 2 to the one side, 1 to the next. It's not a special dance. But you might be feeling like you want to lean more on one side, like tip your hip under. So noticing the differences, feel your way into what is a good massage into the glutes. Not what's perfect on the second side. Okay, while you're massaging your glutes, get your belt, and got something on my sleeve here. So get your belt, and I want you to, if it's already buckled up, really good, you can just get it buckled, get it together in a loop, and you want to make the loop it's pretty small. It's going to go around your thighs, so it's not going to be very big. This is probably too big, but I want to have it big enough I can get it around my thighs to start. Okay, so with that massage path of awareness into your hips and your glutes across to the lateral part of the hip, you're going to move the ball aside. Okay, and then as your spine centers down, just get your belt, bring your knees eventually towards your chest. It might take you a few moments to get this comfortable. So sometimes I like to bring my knees in and kind of like a little bit of a running movement, because it's a nice alternating warm up for my back muscles on my right and left side. I like this. It's almost like you're swishing your sacrum, doing a little bit of a twist, but find a way to bring the knees in that's comfortable for you. And then as you scoop up your feet, you can bring the belt around the center piece of the thighs, closer to the knee though. That'll hold better. And then you're going to cinch up the belt so that it's, you don't want it that far out, right? You want the knees so that you're feeling like it's about hips distance, but it's probably farther out because the knees have a way of inching their way outwards. They just do. That's why the belt closer to the knees is probably better, so they don't slip out. Okay, no slippery knees here. Buckles in the center so it doesn't pop off. And then I would scoot close to your bolster so you got help. Okay. Blanket is maybe good. So a lot of lessons I take in the methods, the methodology is very little blanket for these types of poses. So this is as much as you'd want to go, a quarter fold, but maybe less. Okay. It's going to be better for your shoulders, not just your neck, right? It's a lot of stuff that you'll get support from if your head is farther back. So I'm going to place the blanket right up at the base of what I think of as the base of my neck, right? Right up next to the shoulders, but not under them. So when I move my head, it feels a little soft. And then I want you to push into your feet and lift your hips up and get a block underneath your back of your pelvis so it's high enough, but not too high, right? Some of us will move the block up all the way to the highest setting. It's interesting, but it could be purposeless, right, for what we're up to. So we're trying to restore, okay, not to become big backbenders. So, yeah, if you got a top that's slipping around, I would make sure it's kind of on the block so that you can really get into this shape. My block is I'm just using one. The second setting. You could use 2 blocks side to side on this one. Some people stack them this way, they go horizontal, some go across. I feel like this is plenty for me. But you be the decider. Okay. So arms are going down. If you're lucky and you got an extra length on your belt, if you've got one of those 12-foot belts, you can get your belt. This is a little bit funny to work with, but I think it's worth it. Hold on to the belt and feel the palms open, grip the belt. Yeah, you have to kind of finagle this one. You're not pulling your thighs with the belt. You're just holding the belt individually. It's already holding your thighs to the right distance. Roll the shoulders down and in, back and inwards. But back and down is more important than squeezing them into the spine. So roll the shoulders back, stretch down with the arms, hold the belt a little closer in so it's not any wider than the block that you've got. Your arms are touching the block. Open up the chest, breathe. Okay, now you could put your feet up at the wall. This is nice. I like this quite a bit. It's just that sometimes my block feels a little high when I put my feet up on my back. So you can always change the block, move it down, but I'm content with my feet on the bolster. Maybe it looks like I'm doing more with the wall, but in my body, it feels fine. Now I want you to give a try for hold the belt. If you're not holding the belt, you don't have to. You can just have your hands on the ground. You're going to lift your hips up. The block might tip a bit, but you're going to scoop the tailbone under, and it's like you're moving your tail towards the wall. Okay? So you have some momentum of the hips, but push against the belt. That's why the buckle should be in the center so it doesn't unbuckle. Push out into the legs, lift the hips, breathe. Feet are on the bolster. The wall would be tough. Okay. Now as you lower down onto the block, yeah, it might work out that you got a little more length into the back by doing that. We won't know till it's over. So the back of the pelvis centers, breathe in, belly full. Exhale, belly drops back and the diaphragm drops back towards the heart and the hips lift up. Push into your feet, lift up the hips a little higher than the block. I think it's really a lot higher, but I bet it's not. I have this feeling I'm doing a big lift, but it's probably a nano lift. Okay, now lower down the back of the pelvis. Relax your grip. Yeah, okay. Bring your hands to your block, and I want you to lift the hips a little bit and slide the block out. And now get your ball, sacrum. Ball goes to the sacrum. Lower down onto that ball, lengthen the spine. Let it lengthen. Breathe. Belly moves with the breath. Okay, we're going to do our hip crossover from this viewpoint. Believe it or not, we are. Okay, so take a moment, try to get that base of the spine long, bring the knees to your chest, try to get the abdominals to work extra, and then unbuckle the belt. All right, and then I want you to lower the right foot to the bolster. You're going to let the right knee swerve out and let the left leg cross over. So push the ball out from the sacrum, cross the left thigh over the right thigh, nudge the ball into that sacrum area again. And then if you have sand, you're going to add it to your left outer thigh. If you decide you want your blanket higher, which I certainly do on this one, I'm going to fold it one more time, pull it in, and then get my sand. You can have the block under your knees on the right side if this feels too advanced for your condition, but that's probably not the appropriate thing to say, that your condition, but how you're feeling, right? How your circulation is, your flexibility. So, you know, for instance, some of us might, the knee just keeps going. I think a block is pretty smart on this. Or your other blanket would be good. It's a pretty pretzel-y position, isn't it, with the legs? So we're working on the circulation in the veins right in the legs. This is a great one. So try to keep that crossover unless it hurts your knees. If it hurts your knees, you don't do it, right? You would opt for something different, right? You would not cross the legs so twisty. You would have your knees in more of a fetal position over to the right, and then maybe add the sand if that doesn't hurt. You could do that too, okay? Get the knees farther to the right together on the block. Okay? So either it's crossed over with the left leg or the legs are stacked over to the right side with a block option. Okay, left arm open, give it a few moments, let your head center towards the ceiling or roll to the left. But feeling the whole time that left hip really warm and probably somewhat responsive to the circulation occurring in the hip. Now, if the right hip is kind of pulling up, the bottom hip, see if you can let your weight lean a little bit into that hip, just a little bit. I don't want you to tighten up the right side of the back. So try to get a little weight into that right hip. Take another breath. And then letting go. Move the ball first. Sand those away. And then take your time for that second side. You're going to bring your knees back in center. And then uncross. If you need to let the knees move in and kind of run through the legs for a moment to warm up each side of the back. You can hug them in, but you choose. I like sometimes just feet on bolster. Good here. Cross the right leg over left leg. Good. Get the block on that left side. Okay. Ball to the right hip and then let the knees go left. Put the ball into that lower back sacrum connection. And then add the sand maybe. You might feel like this is enough without sand. I don't need any more weight. You could be right here. It's always an addition, right? The sand is an extra pressure point, and sometimes that stimulation is not going to be helpful. Okay, so up to you. If you want the sand somewhere different, right, like your armpit, that area of the right arm, that could be interesting. But again, that's kind of tricky to finagle all by yourself. But as your right arm stretches open, feel the opportunity for the ribs to reach, the head to roll. So we're going to feel pretty kind of wrung out and right before our last pose here. So you're going to feel like you're kind of squeezing through the abdominal area, through the kidneys. And then we'll rinse it when we get our legs up the wall. We'll rinse it out. Breathing, weight back into the shoulders. And who knows, maybe this hip on the other side relaxes down a lot easier. You don't have to worry about relaxing it, it already goes. Really make the opportunity of feeling the breath with that felt sense of movement between the ribs with each inhale. And each exhale probably feels like it relaxes into the back ribs. So that feeling of cleansing can continue all the way through to the end, even in the ribs here. So if you have the sand on, you might decide I take sand off before I take the ball. That could be your plan. But kind of feel if you change it up a little bit, sometimes that can be useful. Just be wise, a little bit of self-inquiry, transitioning. Okay, when you take the move of the ball, then the back can kind of nudge its way towards its back. Okay, but I like if I've already created the motion rotating, I'm going to just keep going left. And then as I come up, I'm going to slide my blanket in towards the wall and add my blanket number 2 next to me. And then I want you to get your seat up on your bolster with your rear as close to the wall as it can go. This is really important. Okay, now my bolster's against the wall. I'm going to swing the legs upside down. Now, if you've done if you follow the method of having the block against the wall and your bolster next to the block to have space, that's easier on your hamstrings. But that doesn't mean you put your seat at the wall if you're using something between the bolster and the wall. Some of you are fine getting really close to the wall. Your hamstrings can do that, but if it doesn't work, it's okay. You don't have to have your seat at the wall. The idea is flushing out and kind of rinsing. Okay, so you're going to take sand, perhaps. It can either be at your belly, if that's the best for you. You can bend the knees and reach it around the feet. If that's kind of an exhausting idea, don't worry, you don't have to. You can also put socks on, right? That can be good here. But feel the established reach of the back muscles all the way from the kidneys, even though those are muscles, sweeping towards the glutes. And then that impressionable, the glutes are impressionable on this one. They really do a nice press back at the top of them. Okay, ribs, center, arms in cactus. I think I like cactus pose for this one sometimes. Most of the time I'll go below the shoulders, but it just is a nice balancer for each lung, for each side of the heart. So take a moment to let the eyes close and bring a focus somewhere. It could be torso, it could be the heart, it could be a place in your body that needs healing, or is kind of searching for a healing response. And let all the events that are occurring with your legs upside down, because that's a support for healing, to merge in where you need that support. Inside movement with the breath. Now feeling if the belly moves, if the abdominal basin gently lifts, also let it relax back and feel that movement back towards the heart. This is a heart healthy pose, right? This is a primarily cardiovascular and immune system support pose, but it's so helpful for the heart. So feeling its pace slow down on each exhale. So knowing that once the feet get pretty cool or they feel tingly, you've done the work, right? You've already moved all that blood from the extremities back to the vital organs. So you've already started that healing response. And that could be thought of as being enough, right? So even 2 minutes in this pose, probably no longer than 10. If your feet fall asleep, it's not going to be effective. So if you like to be upside down and they fall asleep when they're this high, you can always put them over a chair and stay upside down for a bit. But for the event of our practice, let the feet shift from the wall, let the knees bend. And I want you to first start, like I like a blanket over here so it kind of massages into the abdominals when I bring the knees to bending. I like that pressure, but you can let your sand fall overhead or place it to the side. But hug the back of the legs, get a little bit of cross fiber friction in the back muscles. And feel that touch down in the back. And just go slowly, cross fiber motion to the side of choice that you want to roll to. And you want to stay at the bolster still. Roll, push, and then take a moment, even if it's a little shaky, just to get up to sitting, crossing at the ankles or the shins and bring your hands to the thighs. Lift up the brain and just get a feel of connection inwards, bodily, but also some harmony from mind to body. Bring the hands up to the space in front of your heart. Bring the palms gently to touching. And let's connect with the breath, virtually feeling the presence of our practice together for ourselves and for others. Take a deep breath in. And with exhale, bowing into that space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Thank you. All right. See if anyone is already packed.